Welcome to the Get Over Yourself podcast. This is Brad Kearns. I cover health, fitness, peak performance, personal growth, relationships, happiness, and longevity. So slow down, take a deep breath, take a cold plunge, and pursue your competitive goals in all areas of life with great intensity and passion, but release your attachment to the outcome and learn to have fun along the way. That's the theme of the show. Here we go.
You have to manage your emotions at all times. I almost said you have to stay calm, but Christopher corrects me where we don't want to stay calm because that doesn't indicate the proper competitive intensity. We want to stay focused, perhaps relaxed, but in that competitive mindset with a stable emotional state rather than a explosive emotional state.
She was a girl. Hey, listeners. Our lives rearranged. Feeling so good that day. This is Brad Kearns. Welcome to the Breather Show. Many people agree my voice is exactly like Anthony Kiedis of the Chili Peppers. Turning your feelings are burning, you're breaking the girl. Agree? Disagree? Send your comments to getoveryourselfpodcast@gmail.com. And now on with the show. And man, my golf guru, my mentor, Christopher Smith, the greatest speed golfer of all time, operating out of Eugene Country Club these days and writing a fabulously wonderful newsletter, which you should sign up for at ChristopherSmithGolf.com. He's a big music fan, so we had to do the proper intro there, and you will hear more from him. We did actually 3 separate podcasts during a binge session when I visited his wonderful home in Eugene, Oregon. Had a lot of great times and great insights from this guy. Of course, everything is framed in golf because he is a teacher of golf and a lifelong competitor. But the insights that he communicates in his newsletter apply to all manner of peak performance goals in life. So, in teaching me to become a better golfer, one of his maxims that he has to repeat to me is to have compassion for your mistakes out there on the golf course. Because that heightened intensity that comes when you get fired up and allow your emotions to spike, well, that might help you in the boxing ring if you're Rocky. I know as a triathlete, when I got frustrated, I would just put the gas pedal on harder and speed to the front of the pack or whatever, just opening up the throttle and unleashing that raw competitive intensity to my benefit. But in golf, oh man, big difference. You have to manage your emotions at all times. I almost said you have to stay calm, but Christopher corrects me where we don't want to stay calm because that doesn't indicate the proper competitive intensity. We want to stay focused, perhaps relaxed, but in that competitive mindset with a stable emotional state rather than a explosive emotional state. It's tough, man. It's tough to have compassion for your mistakes when you're trying really hard and you've practiced really hard and you want to play well. And I just returned from 2018 World Speed Golf Championships, my 4th visit there. I did pretty crappy for the first couple days. I was very frustrated because I'd practiced so hard. And then I go out there to the course, the competitive setting, and can't execute in the manner that I intended. Oh, I learned something from that too, which is Christopher's maxim of context specificity, where you want to simulate the competitive experience as exactly as possible in training to properly prepare yourself for peak performance. We're going to do a whole show surrounding themes like that. But a brief tidbit here is you got to put yourself under that same competitive pressure that you face in practice. Otherwise, the practice will not translate well into competitive success. So I realized that I hadn't really played a full-on, full-speed competitive speed golf round hardly ever in practice. I usually go out there and jog. I don't want it to be too strenuous. I might hit an extra practice shot here and there if I don't like my shot, and I have a nice time and I finish 9 holes before dark. But now I've been getting up first thing in the morning, man, first guy out there on the course, playing the entire 18 holes in a tournament-like setting, hitting only 1 ball and keeping score and keeping time. And this has vastly more value and competitive application than my breezy evening rounds or even spending an hour on the range hitting 100 golf balls. I'm better off hitting 7 or 8 or 12 drives under pressure rather than a full bucket of balls. Anyway, back to the story about the having compassion for your mistakes and watching out for your self-critic. So Christopher's newsletter, talking about this commentary, and I'm going to quote, "Is your self-critic alive and well? I understand. And so does Adam Phillips, English psychoanalytical writer." Christopher continues, "The self-critical part of ourselves," Phillips points out, "is, quote, strikingly unimaginative. A relentless complainer whose repertoire of tirades is so redundant as to become, to any objective observer, risible and tragic at the same time." Oh, man. Here's quoting from Phillips in Christopher's newsletter. "Were we to meet this figure socially, as it were, this accusatory character, this internal critic," he's talking about our own internal critic, are you with me? "We would think there was something wrong with this person. He would be just boring and cruel. We might think that something terrible had happened to him, that he was living in the aftermath, in the fallout of some catastrophe. And we would be right." End quote. Ouch, man. How's your self-critic doing? What kind of stories do you tell yourself every day? I know I have these outbursts on the golf course. Sometimes they surprise me at their level of intensity. And, I saw another quote from somebody, not sure if it was Christopher, but it was something to the effect of, when you have a temper tantrum on the golf course, you are trying to convince the other golfers that you think you're better than you really are. Oh, did I get that right? In other words, you're just putting on an act so that everyone observing will know that that terrible shot you just hit is completely out of character and that you usually make pars. Oh, man. And they've been talking a long time, ever since Mark McCormick's great book in the early 80s, What They Don't Teach You at Harvard Business School is the title. They've been talking a long time about how the golf course brings out personality insights like no other place. It's like the ultimate location for a job interview because your true character emerges due to the competitive nature, the personal intensity of what you're doing, trying to navigate a course, and also to work with people in your foursome and have the social connection as well. There's a great article in golfsouthwest.com website about golf being a window to the soul. A licensed therapist from Augusta, Georgia, Tobias Schreiber, weighs in. Quote, "Golf and business are both competitive arenas. Any trait you see in a person repeatedly on the golf course is probably part of their personality and carries over into other aspects of their lives." End quote. Interesting. So when we're in a job interview, we can mask all kinds of crazy things about our personality, including our penchant for emotional, raging outbursts or feeling sorry for ourselves and telling stories. And those things come out in the workplace over time. You're like, why did I hire this person? They're such a drag. But one round of golf, that was McCormick's statement, that when he was thinking of doing business with someone, he'd invite them for a round of golf, and that would be a vastly better assessment than, I think the quote was, hundreds of hours of business meetings in the boardroom. So Schreiber's article goes on to identify certain personality types on the golf course, and again, making the point each time that this stuff plays out into other areas of life. So pay attention, even if you're not a golfer. The first one is the rager. Quote, rage is an infantile emotion, a primal defense against feelings of weakness. Rageful people are actually age-regressing and acting out frozen emotions. Rage usually masks deeper feelings. Such people are often infuriated at their own sense of vulnerability and inadequacies, end quote. Ouch, man. And of course, when you rage, as I talked about briefly, in any sport, Schreiber notes, there's an optimum level of arousal that can actually improve your play. So remember I said you don't want to be calm and relaxed on the golf course. Christopher corrected me there. What you want to have is that optimal level of arousal where you're focused, you're intent, you're looking at your target, you're concentrating, but you don't let emotions get the better of you. And Schreiber says, quote, in golf, this optimal level of arousal is very low because the game requires precision and control. If you pass that bar, if you exceed that bar, it's downhill all the way because anger is so self-defeating to the golfer. Obviously, in the workplace, the ragers play out with those outbursts, especially taking things out on people with less power. That leads us to the next category, the obsessor. The obsessors internalize their emotions. It's not as visible as the angry outburst, but it's equally disruptive, says the article. And then the quote from Schreiber, the obsessor is not living in real time. Instead of shaking off a bad shot and moving on, they replay it again and again in their minds, chastising themselves for poor performance in a kind of mental self-flagellation. They focus on the negative. They think if they hit a bad shot, they're a bad person. And then the observation in the workplace or in other arenas, golfers who ruminate about their play are likely to micromanage in a business environment. They don't like to delegate because they fear no one can do the job right. Next is the sire. No, just kidding. That was me sighing because so far I'm doing okay, but I'm noticing a tiny bit of myself, sometimes at my worst, of course, and we're all looking at how we can be better when we're at our worst, when we're at our back against the wall type of thing, when we're playing very poorly or having a really rough day. There will be a little bit of rage. I'll go a little bit into that category, a little bit into the obsessor category where I'm ruminating about my bad shots. And the next category is sulker. Quote, sulkers don't have a healthy view of themselves in relation to the natural frustrations of life. They tend to feel persecuted by the same minor problems that plague us all, Schreiber says. They exaggerate the importance of small things and focus on the negative. Sulkers really want sympathy and nurturing, but their behavior actually has the opposite effect. It pushes people away. And in real life, this means they're fixated on end results rather than enjoying the course, the camaraderie, and the weather. Golf for them becomes just another stressor. Oh, mercy. That is the saddest one, I think. And Christopher takes great aim at the sulker as a recurring theme in many of his newsletters. If you're not out there able to enjoy your beautiful walk in nature that is a golf round, man, you have your head screwed on the wrong way. And I can recall as a younger person with my competitive intensity less regulated than it is today, I definitely had a little of that going on at times where I was just miserable because I was having a bad round. And I feel like I've grown out of it now where I have a bad break on the golf course and it doesn't bother me in the slightest. Or when we wake up on the day of the World Championships and we're looking at nearly freezing rain and horrible conditions on the course, I smile and say, gosh, I'm glad I'm running because I'd be really cold if I was playing regular golf, and things like the weather never bother me. So I'm going to give myself a little bit of plus points in the sulker category and try to work on the episodes of rage and obsessing, trying to have that compassion for my mistakes. And here are some final closing questions from Christopher out of his article, asking yourself these hard questions as it pertains to your efforts on the golf course. But again, plug these into your role as a parent or as a peak performer in the workplace or as a student. Number one, did you do your very best? No, not just try, but actually do your very best. Did you plan? Did you focus in the manner that befits you? Did you give it your all? Or did you go about it half-assedly, hoping the ball and the round were going to mythically cooperate? Ooh, that's a good one. Because we can always backslide into this, hey, I'm doing the best I can, and then everyone backs off from their constructive criticism or the pressure that they exert on you. And it's such a throwaway line because you have to define that carefully. And in terms of preparing for a competitive experience like a golf round, hey man, did you get out there? Did you warm up? Did you look at the course? Did you put in the proper hours of practice to align with your expectations? I encountered a lot of dreamers on the professional triathlon circuit. I can tell you that right now, where they were heading to these races, obviously in vastly inferior fitness or competitive caliber as the people they were hoping to beat somehow, maybe praying they would all have a bad day or get flat tires or something. But you got to have realistic competitive expectations. Oh man, I loved listening to Lance Armstrong interviews during his reign as Tour de France champion, and everyone saw him as a cocky guy and his swagger and all that. But if you listen carefully to a lot of those interviews, they'd ask these leading questions like, do you think that you're going to be able to beat everybody in the mountains tomorrow? And he would very often say, I don't know, but I'm really prepared and I've worked really hard. But he always had the internal reference rather than the swagger and the irresponsible commentary that we see as commonplace in these other sports where they're just talking trash and it's may or may not be backed up, but it means nothing. In Australia, they had a saying that was used a lot of times on the triathlon scene, when the flag drops, the bullshit stops. You know, the flag drops to start the race. Yeah, you get it. Okay, so Christopher, number 1, did you actually do your very best? Not just try, but actually do it. Number 2, did you trust and follow your gut, your instinct, your intuition? Or did you abide by some supposed smarty pants rules, regulations, and rigmarole? Whew, you know what? I reflect on this one in the parenting role, man, because there's so many crazy forces out there in today's world, the age of the helicopter parent and the child at the center of the universe who can do no wrong, and the parents fight their battles for them and clear their path for their easy path through life, and the misplaced competitive intensity in the areas of academics and youth sports. And it all gets to be so crazy that it can sometimes cause you to second guess your own intuition. Like, this seems like bullshit. It seems kind of crazy that the soccer games weren't canceled when we have a stage 1 smog alert. Things like that. So I remember many of those times where I had to really check myself and sit down quietly and realize that my intuition was telling me something really important, and I needed to honor it despite going against social pressures and convention. How's that? Number 3. Why do you play the game in the first place? Bragging rights about your low handicap? To nourish the narcissist inside? Or to relish a walk in the countryside? That would be the golf course, people, and also the camaraderie and the challenge to self. Summarizing. Number 1, did you do your very best? Not just try, but do, including advanced planning and preparation, getting yourself into that optimal level of arousal for the competitive circumstance. Number 2, did you trust and follow your gut, your instinct, and your intuition? Or did you abide by the silly conventions of society and the pressures and forces outside that are measuring and judging us? And number 3, why do you play the game in the first place? Bragging rights, nourishing the narcissist, or relishing the experience, the walk in the countryside, the camaraderie, and the challenge to self. Thank you so much for listening. Good luck out there on the golf course if you happen to play golf, and good luck doing every other peak performance endeavor. And I don't know what, when, or why. Twisting and turning, a feeling is burning, you're breaking the girl. Hi, Brad Kearns, co-author of the New York Times best-selling Keto Reset Diet. And guess what? We have a fabulous, comprehensive online multimedia mastery course to help you go keto the right way. Mark Sisson and I, working on this book project, digital course, we are so happy because we realize that the hype and the popularity, the exploding popularity of keto, comes with it a lot of misinformation and ill-advised approaches where people jump into this not knowing anything, not preparing properly, and struggle and suffer or have a brief short-term success, floating on stress hormones because of the extreme dietary transition without proper preparation, and then they crash and burn and go back to regular life or say, yeah, I don't think it's good for women or it's not good for athletes. So let's do something right for once when you're talking about a dietary transformation. Put the hype aside, get educated properly, and have a total immersive experience where we guide you with all the tips and information and education that you need to not only do it the right way, but know why you're doing it the right way. Our multi-stage approach is what distinguishes the Keto Reset from the hype shortcut programs. So first you undergo a 21-day metabolism reset where you ditch those terrible foods that are prevalent in the modern diet, the grains, sugars, refined vegetable oils, and you transition over to the ancestral style foods that are colorful and nutrient dense and not going to spike your glucose and cause an insulin rush and keep you in that carbohydrate dependency pattern, which is no fun and also will promote disease and aging. So we do the reset. Then we have a fine-tuning period where we engage in fasting, always comfortable, always just seeing where your body is rather than forcing things to happen. So you do some fasting, you get good at metabolic flexibility. That means that you're good at burning stored energy like fat, like ketones when you need them. And then finally you go into a focused period of nutritional ketosis that lasts for a minimum of 6 weeks to get the maximum metabolic benefit, these benefits that you can enjoy the rest of your life. So when you go to ketoreset.com, KETORESET.com, you can learn about the books and the cookbooks and then get a little test drive through the course with some video explanation. I think you'll really appreciate it if you're interested in keto. So check it out. And guess what? Since you're listening to me talk about this so patiently, I'm going to give you 20% off your course enrollment. Just use the code BRAD20, BRAD20 when you check out, and that'll knock 20% off your enrollment fee. KetoReset.com.